Welcome to today's Explainer. I want you to imagine something with me for a second. We're traveling way back, all the way to 300 BC in ancient China. Picture this. You're a high-level strategy consultant working for a massively wealthy, incredibly powerful boss. He sends you off to a neighboring territory on a totally routine debt collection run. But instead of bringing back briefcases full of cash, you pull off a financial maneuver so utterly crazy it almost gets you fired on the spot. Today, we're unpacking this mind-blowing historical case study because, believe it or not, it holds some of the most profound wisdom for modern resource management, career strategy, and brand building. I am so pumped to share this with you because the logic here, it's literally just as relevant today as it was over 2 millennia ago. Now, this brings us right to the ultimate strategic dilemma. Let's look at this through the eyes of our guy, Feng Xuan. He was a retainer, basically think of him as an in-house consultant for Lord Mengchang, a major aristocrat. Before heading out to collect those debts in a place called Shu, Feng Xuan casually asks his boss, "Hey, when I'm done collecting the money, what should I buy and bring back?" And Lord Mengchang just kind of shrugs and says, "I don't know, just look at whatever my house is missing and buy that." Sounds simple enough, right? Well, like any brilliant strategist, Feng Xuan immediately does a rapid-fire asset audit. He looks at his client's portfolio. Vault overflowing with gold? Check. Stables full of top-tier horses? Check. Palaces stuffed with luxury goods? Check. So what absolutely crucial core asset was missing from this billionaire's portfolio? Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll break down this crazy brand marketing stunt. Then, we'll look at the epic clash between short-term gains and long-term foresight. After that, we'll take this 300 BC strategy and map it straight onto a modern career survival guide called the 3 burrows. And finally, we'll look at how entrepreneurs decide between a consumable budget and a true asset. Let's get into it. Part 1, Crazy Brand Marketing, the legendary debt-burning stunt. So here's how this whole thing goes down. Feng Xuan rolls into the territory of Zhe, and he gathers up all the citizens who owe his boss, Lord Mengchang, money. He checks all the contracts, tallies up this massive mountain of debt. But then he does something completely unthinkable. He doesn't collect a single dime. Instead, he stands up, falsely claims he has direct orders from Lord Mengchang, and forgives every single debt right there on the spot. He literally burns the physical contracts in front of everyone. The citizens are completely stunned for a second, and then they just erupt into cheers, yelling, "Long live the Lord." Feng Xuan instantly hops on his horse and sprints back to his boss. Now, put yourself in Lord Mengchang's shoes. You send a guy to collect your money, and he walks back in empty-handed. The boss asks, "Did you collect the debt? What did you buy?" And Feng Xuan drops this absolutely legendary mic drop line. He says, "Your house has plenty of treasures, horses, and beauties. It lacks only righteousness. So, I bought righteousness for you." The core concept behind that crazy line is what Feng Xuan called buying righteousness. He's basically telling his boss, "Look, you were treating these people like a commodity to squeeze for profit, so I burned your contracts to buy their absolute loyalty." We have to understand, this was not charity. No way. This was a highly calculated, incredibly precise corporate social responsibility campaign and brand-building exercise. Feng Xuan intentionally forfeited that short-term, immediate cash grab to build a massive, long-lasting brand reputation in the minds of the citizens. Moving to part 2, the clash of short-term gains and long-term foresight. Naturally, there was some pretty massive emotional fallout from this stunt. We're looking at a huge collision between a highly visionary strategic consultant and a wealthy but very short-sighted client. Lord Mengchang was absolutely furious. I mean, he literally told Feng Xuan to get out of his sight. He just couldn't wrap his head around this invisible asset they supposedly just bought. All he saw was a giant pile of cash going up in smoke. On day 1, the boss is just raging about the financial loss. But let's fast forward exactly 1 year. The political winds shift. The King of Qi gets suspicious of Lord Mengchang and strips him of his office. He loses his power, his status, and is forced into exile back to his little territory of Shu. But as he's approaching the territory, still like 100 miles out, he sees the most unbelievable sight. The citizens, the exact same people who remembered him forgiving their debts, are pouring out of their homes, young and old, lining the streets all day just to welcome him back. And it's in that exact moment, Lord Mengchang turns to Feng Xuan and says, "That righteousness you bought for me, today I finally see it." And this brilliantly illustrates a brutal, yet totally real business law. Some investment returns are neither immediate nor direct. Long-term value investing often feels like a frustrating, pointless loss in the short term. The capital Feng Xuan burned wasn't actually wasted. It was transformed. It went from a highly liquid cash asset into a ridiculously resilient brand equity asset. When the ultimate crisis hit, that deeply rooted loyalty was the only safe harbor Lord Mengchang had left. All right, part 3, the 3 burrows, and how this is actually your modern workplace guide. See, Feng Xuan's strategy didn't stop at the debt burning. After proving his strategic genius, he used this huge win to pitch his boss on a much broader, completely diversified risk portfolio. Feng Xuan basically tells his boss, a cunning hare needs 3 burrows to survive. Right now, you only have 1. Let me dig 2 more for you. This is actually where the famous ancient idiom, the cunning hare's 3 burrows, comes from. But people get this wrong all the time. They think it just means having a plan B. The real secret here is that these 3 burrows have to be fundamentally different from each other. They must be complementary. If you have 3 backup plans, but they all rely on the exact same market conditions, you don't actually have 3 burrows. You're literally just a bigger target. Let's see how this historically played out step by step. First, Feng Xuan secured burrow number 1, buying righteousness, which locked in local brand loyalty. Next, he built burrow number 2. He traveled to the rival state of Liang and aggressively hyped up Lord Mengchang, convincing the king of Liang to send envoys with heavy gold to try and hire him. This created immense external value. Because the moment the king of Qi saw a rival trying to poach his exiled minister, he panicked, realized Mengchang's worth, and begged him to come back. Finally, burrow number 3. Feng Xuan advised Mengchang to build a temple for the king's ancestors right there in Shui. This created ultimate institutional protection, because there is no way the king would ever attack a city housing his own ancestor's shrine. So we have brand loyalty, external market validation, and institutional protection. 3 completely distinct levers of power. Now we can translate this ancient playbook directly into a survival guide for your career today. If you don't want your entire professional life held hostage by the ups and downs of one boss or one company, you absolutely need your own 3 independent burrows. Burrow 1 is your ability. That's your continuous, unrelenting professional skill growth. That's your baseline. Burrow 2 is your network. But I'm not talking about climbing the internal corporate ladder. I mean industry-wide connections and external validation, just like Feng Xuan getting that job offer from the rival state. And Burrow 3 is your reputation. Being known among your peers as a highly reliable, helpful professional. If you only have one of these, you are incredibly fragile. But when all 3 are working together, you've essentially woven an impenetrable professional safety net. Moving into part 4, for entrepreneurs out there, are you focusing on consumption or assets? This mind-blowing framework doesn't just apply to your personal career, it is an absolute game changer for founders and business owners trying to figure out how to allocate their capital. So the crucial point here is understanding the vital difference between these 2 types of spending. So many founders, the second they get funding, just torch it on consumable budgets. Think aggressive short-term marketing, blowing cash on ads, or blind rapid hiring. You spend that money, you get a quick spike in the metrics, and poof, it's gone forever. But someone with Feng Xuan thinking forces themselves to look at asset investments, what looks like a short-term expense but is actually building long-term indestructible business value. Things like deep employee training programs, phenomenal customer relationship building, and genuine brand equity. In the modern business world, these are the exact equivalent of buying righteousness. Sure, they might not make your quarterly revenue look insane today, but when the market winter hits, these assets are going to be the absolute only thing that keeps your company alive. Which brings us to part 5, invisible returns are the most valuable. This really brings everything together and highlights our ultimate realization about managing our personal and professional resources. Think about all those non-utilitarian things you do in life. Helping out a friend without expecting anything back, volunteering your free time, or even just being the person who jumps into a community forum to answer a stranger's question. If you look at it through a hyper-calculating short-term lens, the immediate ROI on those actions is literally 0. But fundamentally, they are relationship deposits. You are quietly building this massive, invisible reservoir of assets. Just like Lord Mengchang experienced when he was exiled, you'll often find that when you really truly need help, it's these exact pointless acts of goodwill that end up paying off in the most unexpectedly huge ways. Let's summarize the absolute core insight we can pull from this 300 BC masterclass in strategy. Don't just chase visible returns. The most valuable assets are often the ones you can't see right now. Whether it's burning a mountain of debt contracts to buy a city's love, or just going out of your way to help an industry peer today, true strategic foresight requires us to look way past the immediate balance sheet. As we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a question just to help you reevaluate your own long-term strategy. What burrows are you building today? Are you just chasing that short-term cash flow, or are you actually making strategic investments, deepening your abilities, expanding your network, and building a rock-solid reputation so that when the unexpected happens, you already have an unbreakable safety net waiting for you? Take a page out of Feng Xuan's book. Start digging those complementary burrows and start investing in your invisible assets today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.